Hey everyone, and welcome to our October 26th regular City Council meeting. It's my pleasure to declare that everyone is here in attendance, and I will ask the Director of Corporate Services, Mr. Matt McDonald, to lead us in a moment of reflection.
May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Help us to be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, always having respect for others so that we may serve the people of our city in a helpful manner and for the good of all.
Thank you. You may be seated. All right. I'll ask for a disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof from any members of council. Seeing none, we have no public meetings today, so we'll move on to reading and confirmation of minutes of the regular council meeting of October 13th, 2020 and the regular in-camera meeting minutes of October 13th, 2020. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Culhane. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? It's carried. So we don't have any deputations today, but we do have a very special presentation to make. And it's my pleasure to recognize Kim Wilson, who is now the longest-serving employee for the City of Belleville with the Fire and Emergency Service Department. Kim started as a summer student in 1984 and then was hired full-time on March the 4th, 1985. At that time, as we refer to it as the Treasury Department. And she worked in Treasury from 1985 to 1995. And then she switched over to the City Clerk's office from 1995 to 2000. And then in 2000, she saw the light and made her move to the Fire and Emergency Service Department, where she has served ever since. Her husband, Mark Wilson, who's also with us today, he worked for the city as well. And they have a daughter, Jenny, who is here today. Welcome to the family. It's great to have you here. And I understand that upon entering City Hall today, Kim had a proper reception with members of the fire service here with their trucks, and made sure that they gave her the proper entrance. In addition to her personal or her professional work, in her personal life, Kim has been involved in guiding as a Brownie leader for many years. She is the Vice President of the Ontario Fire Chiefs Administrative Assistance Association. And as I said earlier, she is the longest-serving City of Belleville employee, and we're really proud of her and for that fact. So I have a couple of things I'm going to present to you, Kim. We have a certificate from the city recognizing your work, as well as a small gift. But Chief McDonald was kind enough to share with me the fact that you've also received the Fire Marshal's Long Service Award for Fire Services Administrative Personnel. And it recognizes your more than 20 years of dedication to the Ontario Fire Service. You have a wonderful sterling silver, I think this is a brooch, as well as a certificate. So I'm just going to put my mask on and I'll come back and we'll present it to you, okay? Go ahead, Kim. Yes. Just push the button, though, to turn the microphone on. No, on the bottom of the, yeah. There you go.
It turns red.
Yes.
So I wore red for fire, so I should be used to looking for red. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you, Your Worship, Mayor Panchek, members of council, and senior management, and all the guests, and especially my daughter and husband for being here today. My daughter doesn't like if I cry, so we'll try to keep this good, Jenny. Thank you for recognizing me today for 35 years. Doesn't seem that long, but sometimes it does. And I was really happy that they hired 10-year-olds in the 80s to do filing. I need like that, Chief. My summer student in 1984, and then you had to say that you were going back to school, which I did so I could get the job. Shh. Anyway, then after that, I went to the Ministry of Revenue in Toronto, and they were grooming me to be an auditor. And I didn't really like Toronto, so the summer job did pay off because Al Johnson, who was the deputy treasurer at the time, called and offered me a job. And I didn't like Toronto, didn't want to raise a child there, so I took him up on it. So in Treasury Department gave me a good foundation of customer service, dealing with, ugly people with their parking tickets. And I was proud to do the city's monthly bank reconciliations. I dealt with bonds and debentures and filling in on the switchboard, and that was probably the most important job at the Treasury because I called my husband on the 3rd floor in engineering and asked him out, and we've been married for 30 years.
Good.
In city clerk's office, I did vital statistics such as marriage licenses. I did council agendas, and I thought it was a big job just to put your names out here. Okay, and here we are. The best was yet to come. I didn't know that I would leave City Hall. I thought when I was in Treasury Department, I thought, I'll give it 2 years. If I don't like it, see, I've been here 35 years. This is menopause, so, Anyway, the best was yet to come at the Belleville Fire Department. I have been there since March 4th, 2000. I'm used to 2020, but 2000 as I've been assistant. It has been a great job for me. The guys have they saw the new girl coming, so they all had to watch their manners and their language, because, it was an all men atmosphere. So I hope I didn't offend them with my language too much. I want to recognize all the firefighters, 6 deputies, and I'm on my 3rd chief. We really are a family at the fire department. They are professionals. Firemen have supported my husband at times. They've come to our house as a call to help him get into the vehicle so I could get him to Kingston Hospital with his health issues. We've had firemen when I was off with my neck injury and I couldn't get any money because WSOB didn't think it was a real injury. Firemen gathered together and gave me money to get my groceries. I've had firemen show up at my yard, rake my leaves because I knew my husband couldn't do it and I had a young child. The day our dear Jenny was in a bad accident, the firemen were there. When she called me, she said, "Don't worry, Mom, the guys are here." And I don't think the guys really realized how much support and comfort they gave to my family. And it still continues. Chief McDonald, boy, we've been through a lot since you become the chief. I've seen the chief be a firefighter. He was prevention. I was off when he was deputy, and he was deputy for so long I came back from my injury, and he was the chief. And I want to thank you, Chief, for being there for me over the years that have been tough with Mark's everything. You're very compassionate, and I thank you for that. It will never be forgotten. To the co-workers, all the young whippersnippers looking for my job, I'm not leaving yet.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kim, and we're looking forward to you working for us going forward. You are now as I said, the longest-serving employee for the city. So if ever you have any advice for CEO Bove, he's always open to hearing it. Yes, I'm sure. Okay, you can ask him the questions. But no, we're really proud of the fact that you've worked for us for so long. we feel privileged, and it's great to hear the stories about how you get along with everyone in the fire service in the city before. Lots of health and happiness moving forward, okay? Yeah, congratulations, Kim Wilson. Next item, we'll move on to Committee of the Whole, and need a motion to go into Committee of the Whole to hear and consider reports, passing of recommendations and resolutions with myself in the chair. Moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. So we'll move to 8A, and I'll remind anybody that is watching on television or watching on their streaming service that all the reports and the agenda are on the city website as well, and so you can follow along, including looking at the information. The agenda shall include under reports items that warrant individual attention from council, and we'll start with 8A1, renovations to City Hall Council Chambers Tender Award. It is the Chief Administrative Officer's Report number CAO 2020-08, and the resolution is that the request for tender submission from Tom Belch and Sons Building Contractors Limited be accepted for the renovations to City Hall Council Chambers in the amount of $235,900 plus $30,667 HST for a total of $266,567, this being the lowest cost tender received, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the Corporation of the City of Belleville, and that the City Clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal, and that the 2020 capital budget be amended by adding $15,500 from the capital levy reserve to the project budget. Mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Sandison, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Questions or discussion? Councillor Carr.
Thank you. I noticed in the report it says that it would be completed in early 2021. Just in terms of time frame, what duration of period are we looking at?
Mr. Beauvais, or CEO Beauvais.
Through the chair to Councillor Carr. Although we haven't met yet with the contractor, we anticipate the work will likely take in the range of 2 to 4 months. We're hoping it's much towards the low end of that. As you'll see in the report, there is an application that's in for accessibility funding. We have been advised that the decision on that application we will get before the end of the year. And it's a typical funding application where we can't start any of the work until they've awarded us the funding. So we're hoping that we have that before the end of the year, and the contractor can start right away. But at worst case scenario, if we get the word at the end of the year, they will begin at the beginning of 2021. So we're talking about at worst case scenario the first 2 or 3 months of 2021.
Okay. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just on that same aspect. So I understand, though, even if we don't get the funding, we will still proceed with the project next year?
Through the chair to Councillor Thompson, yes, the intent is to proceed with the project irregardless of whether we're successful with the application. We will continue to move forward with the project as designed, which includes those accessibility elements. Yeah. So whether we get the funding application or not, we're still installing those accessibility features.
Yeah, that was the important part, was to get the accessibility features in there. And the final design has been approved by, we did that at Capital, did we?
Yeah.
So, and it hasn't changed since then?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, we had originally anticipated this project starting in July, but with the request for this funding, and it's a considerable amount of money that would help defray the cost. We were holding off, and we're at a point now where we do need to move on it. So we also got indication that we should be hearing positive news by the end of the year. So as soon as that happens, we can move. You know, Councillor Thompson, we were in a similar situation, if you recall, with the Bell Boulevard tender in February, where we had a process, we were ready to award it. We were just waiting for the federal government to give its go-ahead, so same situation.
No, and I think it's important because a couple of years ago or 3 years ago, we renovated the entrance to make it fully accessible. And now to have a council chamber that isn't fully accessible is sort of not in the right direction, so now we can fulfill the mandate of the city. So, thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions or comments, I will call the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Safe Restart Agreement, application for Phase 2 funding, and it is the Accounting Coordinator's Report number AC 2020-04. And the resolution is that pursuant to Accounting Coordinator's Report number AC 2020-04, Safe Restart Agreement, Municipal Operating Funding, the submission of an application to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing under Phase 2 funding to cover the COVID-19 related financial impacts not met by Phase 1 funding be approved. Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Sandison, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Questions and discussion. Councillor Sandison.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, just to the group. Phase 1 was certainly helpful to all the communities, and however, it was not all-encompassing and didn't capture 100% of our financial impact. So this application, which is accessing the second round of Phase 2, which is an additional $695 million, we are moving forward to request $2.7 million, which basically equates to our loss in casino revenue. And we need that revenue in order to make us whole so that we can advance the capital budget, certainly in the Parks and Rec space, as well as the social infrastructure piece. So I know that Kyle Bertrand in finance has been burning the midnight oil to put this application together, and so I want to thank him for his efforts, and I fully support the submission of the Phase 2 financial assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sandison. Anyone else on this item? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. 8A3, 2020 to 2021 Overnight Warming Center, and it is the Deputy Fire Chief's report number FES 2020-09. And the resolution is that pursuant to the Deputy Fire Chief's report FES 2020-09 for the 2020 to 2021 Overnight Warming Center, Council approved the operation of an overnight warming center and an operating budget of $30,000 funded through the Casino Social Infrastructure Reserve Fund. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Culhane. Questions or comments? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. You know, when it went out in the news and it's on the social media on the warming center being open at minus 15, which we changed last year, it used to be a little higher than that, so thank you for doing that. There's a concern out in the community that maybe we're not open enough nights, but I just want to make sure that at least we make note of that tonight during this meeting, that maybe in the future we look at possibly, once we start getting our finances in order, that maybe we look at a little longer term, maybe a little lower, colder, not as cold, maybe going down, maybe, because there is concerns out there, and certainly because there is a certain amount of homelessness existing for whatever reason that may be, that I'm going to support the motion right now, but I just wanted to make note that this council knows and hears about the social media, that maybe there isn't enough nights in there for a warming night. So, but I will support this, but I certainly will look for feedback during the year on what the outcome of the warming center is, whether it's not being if it's being used enough and whether we needed more, I certainly would be looking for possibly bringing it up again after Christmas if there's a real bad need for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just some thoughts and comments about the warming center, and hopefully you'll bear with me. When I arrived at City Hall today, I was in a discussion with Councillor Sanderson and Councillor Culhane, and we were talking about the warming center. And Mr. Sanderson, Councillor Sanderson, was kind enough to remind us all of all the positive things that happen on a daily basis or throughout the course of a year here in Belleville. And I took some time to write some of those successful programs from the heart, reaching out to people for a helping hand. And my notes, the Gleaners Food Bank, Belleville Churches, how they help out those that need it all the time. Belleville Police Service with the Adopt a Child program, 1,000 kids every year plus. The Belleville Firefighters Toy Drive, Food for Learning program, 10,000 children. Students benefit from the Food for Learning every year. We got an email from Hastings Prince Edward School Board last week about their Food for Home program, 11 weeks a year, on how they make a difference in families. Brandy Hodge of the United Way, I reached out to her throughout COVID. Back in March and April, $315,000 United Way of Hastings Prince Edward made a difference for families with corporate support from Nestle and P&G. So I've been thinking about the warming center, and I was in a conversation with Councillor Culhane a couple of weeks ago, and Councillor Culhane set up a meeting to meet with the peer group. It's a support group in downtown Belleville. So we met with the manager there, Todd Buchanan, and the CEO, Terry Swift, last week. And the peer group normally is open 6 days a week downtown. They have on average 20 visits per day, and they offer computers, food, and they have a laundry facility in downtown Belleville. Now, due to COVID, they have limited staff. They're open 3 days a week from 10:30 till 2:30. Part of the Belleville Peers Support Center, it's in partnership with the local LIN. They're there, they're matched, they're peers, they're volunteers, they're matched with someone that needs support. They may have just come out of the hospital, they may have a drug or alcohol addiction, but this peer support works with them. But they've seen their challenges with COVID-19. So then we see the warming center on the agenda for us. We got last Thursday. So it was open last winter for 24 nights, and on average they had 23 people come. So 24 nights, remember that number. The average winter in Canada is 3.3 months. That's over 100 days. Winter's definition is cold season in Canada. It's also the darkest days, too. I went back and looked up some data from 1985 to 2015. This is from Environment Canada. You can check out the website, timeanddate.com. In December, the average temperature in Belleville, evening temperature, is -7. In January, it's -11, February -11, March -5, April it starts to warm up to +1. So when the numbers are -15 to open up the warming center and the wind chill factor -20, the data would show in 20 years of research that it wouldn't be open one day. But we know that that's not fact because it was open for 24 days last year, last winter, and those certainly doesn't work well with the stats I just read, but that's a 20-year average. So I spent some time with Christy Reeves. She is the Priority Populations Public Health Nurse. As of today, we have 60 plus homeless in the city of Belleville. They're out in the cold. You know, some of us have done the Out in the Cold event with children, I think it's Canadian Mental Health Association, and we go there with our dry clothes, our dry boots, we're dressed appropriately, we stay overnight, and we get up in the morning in the middle of the night and go home. But that's a great campaign, it draws awareness, but that's not really the reality that those who are homeless live. They live in wet clothes, their boots are soaked, they're hungry, malnourished. There's a lot of challenges that they have. So when I talk to Christy Reeve, I say, Christy, how can we make this work? And she's there every day, 5 days a week. She was working 7 days a week when, you know, in March and April and May. We need to have a place that's open 7 days a week. We really have to do this. If you reach out to Hastings County and you say, I'm cold and I need a place to stay, what they do is they send you on the bus to Ottawa if they can't get a hotel room. And you're sent on a bus to Ottawa, and now it's the capital's problem. And the other issue is we're going to send somebody from Belleville right into the top 3 spots for COVID. Is that something we feel comfortable as municipal leaders doing? So I'd like to, if I can, just call up Fire Chief McDonald. Would you take a few questions? Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. So you heard some of my thoughts. There's a program in Sudbury called Off-Street Emergency Shelter, and it's open from 10 p.m. until 8 a.m. throughout the winter months. It's an outreach referral services there as well. At the Warming Center in Belleville, Fire Chief, do we have any support outreach programs in partnership with mental health, Hastings County Public Health? Is there anybody there besides a security guard and some folks to make sure it's a comfortable night when it's open?
Through the chair to Councillor Kelly, historically the Warming Center has been operated strictly with a security guard. We try to keep track of the individuals coming and going, but there is no outreach from social services or from other public health agencies or mental health agencies to date. When we looked at the new police facility, isn't that? When we looked at the old police facility as using it for possibly the Warming Center, the one positive feature that we discussed was the fact that at the west end of the building is the old collision reporting office. So when you come in the foyer, there's a collision reporting office, and then there's the gym. So we can constrain that area, secure it off from the rest of the building, but that would give an office space with the goal of having these outreach people in social services and mental health services to be able to have an office where they can talk to somebody one-on-one with some privacy and some confidentiality. Because I think the situation table used to meet weekly at the fire hall that dealt with high-risk individuals in the community. But that kind of outreach, you get the opportunity to meet the people that may come out of the shadows that wouldn't necessarily seek out these types of agencies. But if you already have them there at the facility, I think it's an excellent opportunity to engage some of those types of outreach workers.
Thank you. Well, another question for you. It's minus 15, wind chill minus 20. You heard me mention the average over a 20-year period, and I know the fire department along with the city last winter were quick to open it up when we got a cold snap for a few days. And we appreciate that. But why is, and Belleville's not alone. There's a lot of other cities in Ontario that are fixated on this minus 15 and minus 20 when, I mean, if your boots are wet and you're soaked and you haven't eaten and you've been out all day in the middle of January and we have some wet snow or whatever, you're cold. And the temperature might only read minus 5. Is there any movement on that minus 15 or minus 20?
The minus 15 and minus 20 was established strictly from the point of view of that in this region of Ontario, that's when the cold alert comes out through Environment Canada. It is within Council's purview to decide the parameters of the warming center activation. And I will take direction from council and from the CAO on what the warming center parameters are and what council wishes to do.
And follow a final question. Do you think, thanks for the report to your deputy as well, do you think there are benefits to the city and our most vulnerable if there was the opportunity to open a facility more often than when it hits that -15? If it was something consistent, with COVID, there's less buildings open now. Is that something that you could see be a big benefit?
I think there's really some challenges with the COVID of how do we keep track of these people? How do we trace them? If you're of no fixed address, then how do we get a hold of you to let you know that you may have had an exposure? So, I mean, the logistics of operating it sort of as the temperature changes, it does create some challenges. I mean, constantly having to watch weather forecasts and then reach out to the security and reach out to people that need to be involved with the cleaning. I mean, if something was open more consistently, it would make it probably easier for planning and programming because we could line up the staff and the necessary resources on a consistent basis versus having to make that decision 24 to 48 hours out that we're going to activate. So it's a lot of cities activate it based upon a temperature range, but it is a challenge because you're going to have to pull resources with fairly short notice. And then the other issue is some of these people may not have lines of communication to be able to find out the information that the warming center is open. That's why we made the sandwich board up, and we use our social media connections through the city of Belleville to make sure these people know where to go. I mean, I don't think anybody is comfortable outside when it's cold and wet and it's inclement. Nobody wants to see anybody to stay outside, and we do have the emergency shelter agreement with Hastings County, but I think we have to have that discussion as to how we best serve these people.
Thank you. So I would summarize it. You say that consistency plays a big role in this, and there's a lot of benefits to it then.
Yes, I would say there is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. If I can just remind everyone, and I think the chief talked about the fact that we have an agreement with Hastings County who provides emergency services. And, you know, if people would like to have a year-round or a winter-long program, Hastings County should be approached about providing that. And, you know, what we're talking about is an emergency stopgap when the temperature becomes extreme. I'll speak about this in my comments, but we're not proposing to replace the services that we now contract Hastings County to provide. So I'll just remind everyone, and I know that we'll keep that forefront in our discussion. Next on the list is Councillor Sandison.
Thank you, Your Worship. Two comments. The first comment is that yesterday I had a phone conversation with Aaron Rivers, Director of Community and Human Services for Hastings County, and she informed me that they in fact have a funding envelope that can be used to cover the $30,000 cost. So we'll be able to get the program started using the casino revenue money, but we'll be able to replenish it with the $30,000 from Hastings County. And I did this morning mention this to our Director of Finance as well. The second comment is just on the report itself, where we actually talk about engaging the Hastings Prince Edward Health Unit, as well as Hastings County Social Service Agency, and it was in an attempt to have clinical support for clients at the warming center. But I think we need to use that as the opening in a discussion with Hastings County specifically to take on a more permanent role in providing this service to the community. So touching on a lot of the comments that Councillor Kelly mentioned, that really that's a dialogue I think that we should be having with them. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to, you've taken my point, and Councillor Sanderson as well, that it's emergency services that we're talking about, not a all winter long operation. And that conversation, I believe, does belong with Hastings County, although they do a tremendous job, and they have been doing a tremendous job all of the years that I've been associated with them. I just wanted to ask, I've been to the warming center. Councillor McCaw and I volunteer at the Salvation Army. We're familiar with lots of folks in the city needing assistance. When I went to the warming center, the nights that it was open on Pinnacle Street, there were certainly folks there who had shelter, but there was also a social component. There was food being delivered, and I don't fault anyone for seeking company or food or companionship or anything. But there was a definite difference between meeting an emergency need and having a place to go to enjoy company and have food. And I think we do need to separate the two and recognize that you are an emergency service provider discussing an emergency service. And thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Culhane. On the first round, Councillor McCaw.
Thank you. Through you, just a couple of thoughts after listening to Councillor Kelly. I'll be really curious to see the numbers that frequent this warming center this year. I suspect we'll see a gradual increase in these numbers from the first time we operated a warming center. My fear is what we're seeing is that now that we have Grayson's shelter here, it is actually attracting those from other areas to come here in hopes they can be in to the Grayson. Grayson gets full quite easily, and then, you know, we have many individuals in need who aren't even our community, are members of our community, and that's to me a difficult situation. So I'll be curious to see what that increase is as we go forward. Secondly, also. I can't remember who said it, but if we're going to operate this warming center, I do think the lead for the warming center should really be Hastings County. We allocate funds from our budget to Hastings County for this reason and many other reasons. So I think that they need to be a part of, be involved with the planning of, and you know, we need to see how this is going to happen as we go through. But again, my major concern really is the increased numbers year after year because of the shelter. And then the practice of Hastings County was to, if they could not find suitable housing or suitable arrangements for these individuals, they would be bused to other areas that have a shelter. So I know many times, and I'd spoken to a few, they weren't happy about that. So there was something for them, but they did not like the arrangement that was made for them. So these are some of the things through my few years with Hastings County on community and human services and council that I've come across with regard to the homelessness issue, the warming center, and Hastings County. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCaw. Councillor Carr.
Thank you very much. And, you know, it's interesting. Here again, the municipality is trying to be agile and flexible to try to come up with a solution when really this is another example of where it's not in our purview. I'm certainly going to support the recommendation for the warming center. I think the location and how the fire chief has described it is excellent. I do know for certain that the City of Toronto, in terms of their shelters that they operate, have made it quite clear, and they brought in very rigid guidelines that anybody utilizing a shelter in the City of Toronto has to have a link to the city. And if they don't, because the demand is so high, that they don't get a spot. And so, you know, and just like every other community, there's obviously a big need in the City of Toronto. But so there could very well be a lot of mobility simply because if there is not a way for that individual to prove that they have connection with the city, they don't get a spot. And I know that in my other line of work, that the shelters in the city of Toronto are full constantly. And so there is that reality. Saying that, I think, and it's, you know, it's been touched on here, and it's critical that Hastings County, but also our other nonprofits really come together here. And so what I'd like to see is, you know, the staff are going to request some engagement. So I'd like to see a follow-up report as to what kind of engagement we're getting back. You know, whether it's public health, Hastings County, but again, all our other non-for-profits that fill that gap. Here's an opportunity where the intake can be done in terms of what other services they require. And it could be as simple as getting identification. And that in and of itself, and I know this from my other line of work, not having identification is a critical problem in terms of obtaining anything else. And so if it's something as simple as that, and there's somebody there that can walk them through that process or help them out with the application fee of $15, that may be the launching pad to not requiring temporary housing, because then they have the identification to apply for something more permanent. So I think that piece is critical. So when staff do reach out to these different NGOs, but also nonprofits, that they report back to us as to who's interested and who's not. And then in addition to that, we've heard today that Hastings County has indicated they have money to offset these costs. And if that's in fact, I think that needs to be in writing to us as well, and some acknowledgement through an agreement. So I think this is a good start. I think we have the potential here as a community to provide a good location that is safe, that is clean, but also provides a little bit of diversity in terms of other groups getting involved. And that right there is the critical piece for success for anybody who may be struggling. You can always come in out of the cold some way, somehow, but getting access to those resources that you need to improve your life, or whether it's through medical attention or addiction or mental health, this is where our groups have to take that captive audience and work with them. So I don't know if we need a motion or if you're looking for an amendment, but I'd like a staff report back with that information once they've engaged other services.
So let's, what I would suggest, Councillor Carr, is let's finish the conversation, and then certainly I'll entertain perhaps like an amendment or a second motion if you'd like to specifically deal with reports. Councillor Millette and Councillor Williams, do you want to say anything on the first round on this? No, I have some comments, and then I know Councillor Thompson wants to speak as well, but I'll have some comments on the first round. And I want to start off first, Chief, I want to say thank you to you. A lot of things fall under the Bailiwick Emergency Services, and this has been one of them. And I want to thank you and the deputy chiefs and the men and women on the service, the fire service, that have attended and helped and checked in and brought refreshments and being involved. I know this is not something you normally do as part of your day, and the last couple of years have been more of a challenge because we've had to use different sites. And so each year we get back in this boat. So I certainly want to say thank you, and I think we're good for questions. So if you want to sit down, I can call you back up again if we're there. You know, this year, COVID has presented a lot of unusual circumstances or unusual challenges for the city. And during that, these challenges, we've maintained the funding that we're putting towards social infrastructure, helping people that are vulnerable, including, you know, we maintained last year's warming center, and we're going to go ahead with this going forward. This spring, when a lot of the agencies that deliver food programs or other types of programs were not allowed to let people indoors, the city stepped up and provided porta potties to make sure that there was proper sanitary facilities. We donated, you know, products to them in terms of hand sanitizer and masks and other equipment, because this is our community and we want to help out. But I think it's important for us to understand what our role is. You know, other councillors sometimes refer to other cities, where those cities themselves deliver social programs. They deliver social services. The city of Belleville, we do not deliver social services, social programs. we have a partnership and an agreement with Hastings County for them to do that as on part of the collective group of municipalities. And so our role is to partner with them. As I said, they provide the whole range of services on our behalf. We don't duplicate those services. We're already paying for them through the original actions. And we have members of council who serve on the Hastings County Social Services Committee, as well as on long-term care and other committees that are there that is important. Hastings County provides emergency services for homeless residents. They do that year-round. Many in our community take advantage of those programs for emergency housing as well as transitional housing and other services, but some don't. As a council, for the last 3 years, we have taken the decision that under certain circumstances, certain conditions, we want to provide an emergency stopgap service. And that is to open up the overnight warming center on nights in which the temperature activation sees that. We're not doing that to duplicate the service of Hastings County. We're not doing that to duplicate their emergency services and their outreach and whatnot. We're doing it because we feel in those circumstances, the extreme temperatures require something different. I don't get any indication from anyone around the table that we want to terminate our contract with Hastings County and that we want to get in and take over social services and other projects. And I think that if we start getting into permanent programs that are designed to replace those of Hastings County, that is the step that we have to start considering is why would we be providing services and paying for them when we're doing the same thing, providing funding to Hastings County to do that. We have the benefit of an agency in terms of Hastings County who does a very good job, and they have for many years. They are able to help people with a full range of services, including those for mental and physical health assessment, housing and emergency shelter, addiction, and other programs to help people. This warming center that we've had, as I said, this is the 3rd year that we've had it. We have learned every year that we brought it in place. This year, I'm really happy to see in the report, you know, the second last paragraph of the report talks about the fact that staff, city staff, will request engagement from the Hastings Prince Edward Health Unit and Hastings County Social Services in an attempt to have clinical support for clients of the warming center. In this last year, the 2019-20 winter, we did not have a single visit by public health coming to make assessments of the people who were taking advantage of the overnight warming center. We did not have a single person come out from an outreach from Hastings County to come in and to make assessments, to be able to explain to people what other options are in the community and how we can get them on to help. And so a really important thing that we are going to do this year is we are going to request them, and we will request it vigorously. Because, you know, again, this overnight warming center is not designed to be a permanent addition to the services we provide. It's there to fill that emergency stopgap. In addition to that, we are going to provide some space in this year's warming center that when a public health nurse comes, when someone from Hastings County assessment comes, they are able to have some confidentiality to be able to deal with the folks in there and find the best way to help them. You know, in 2019, we had, you know, the previous council, let me step back. The 2014 to 2018 council had been very supportive of Grace Inn, and thank goodness they are in our community. And just in the same way, we thank Fire Chief McDonald for all the service they're helping folks that are vulnerable in our community. We also thank all of the agencies, including Grace Inn, and the folks at Hastings County and Public Health, everyone. But when we became the council, we had an understanding that the shelter was opening imminently. And we found out in the winter of 2019 that it was being delayed and it would be a little bit longer. We as a council were hearing all kinds of reports that there were literally hundreds of people who were sleeping outside in the winter. And that's where the first idea of the warming center came from, is that we wanted to open it. We didn't really have a facility. We started in the library. We then moved it to the transit terminal. Last year, the transit terminal wasn't available, so we used Victoria Avenue Baptist Church. They were great to work with. We appreciate it. This year, the former Belleville Police Service facility is available, and we're going to be spending approximately $30,000 to have people who will be there that will be able to, when I say work it, they can attend there, they will handle the registration, ensuring that, that there is order in there, and there needs to be some physical adjustments in that facility. That's what the $30,000 this year is going to be for. We will have to make a change again next year because that facility won't be available, and we will continue to improve the program if we do it. But let's not forget the reason why we stepped in, and let's not simply duplicate the services that someone else is doing. We don't have that kind of money to waste. We all go through our budget process. We know that these funds are essential and can be used somewhere else, but we feel that they're important to provide, and I will support this. I won't support changing the temperature criteria because, again, this is designed for extreme circumstances. If someone is having dealing with homelessness at a temperature of -5, we have programs now that they can take access. If they choose not to for whatever reasons, then that's what we have to deal with. But when it comes to be -15, it doesn't matter what those other reasons are. That is an extreme weather event, and we will activate the warming center, and I'll continue to support that. And I certainly would also support the suggestion by Councillor Carr that at the end of this next year that we get a report again from Chief McDonald and his department regarding the number of people who visited the center, what issues we had, but also how many times our outside agencies interacted to assist those folks. The last thing I want to say is that I think we have learned a lot each year that we've had the warming center open, and I also attend to go in and to observe and to see what's happening. Last year we had a lot of people enter and leave throughout the evening. And one of the suggestions this year is that there is a time where, we will give people access to the facility, but not for them to leave throughout the evening. So there will be a time where they've got to be in, and if they choose to leave, they won't be allowed to be back in. Again, that is their choice. And that is necessary because of some of the instances we had last year. And at the end of the day, this is about trying to help people, and I certainly am grateful that Council has supported this in the past and that we'll support it again going forward. And I thank everybody that's involved in doing all of this. Thank you. On the second round of discussion and questions, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Worship. I've listened to a lot of the discussion going around, and I agree that the Hastings County should be involved because if we bring them in with the possibility, and it's in this agenda, that they be involved and bring in and have some oversight for some of these people that are there for the night that may need some help, whether just to talk to, whether some health reasons, whatever, at least somebody's there. And Hastings County, the new home they built on Sydney Street does that. They have somebody there at different agencies every night looking after, because there's people there from the Mental Health Association and different organizations, and those organizations are also involved with those. So I would think a lot of our charity organizations would be happy if they had the opportunity to come down and support this. And I know Chief McDonald, I called him 4 or 5 times last year because it was getting close, and I know it wasn't quite -15, but he instructed to open it a little earlier, which was a great benefit. I still say there's a need. Thank goodness for Grace Inn. They certainly take some off our shoulders, but there's a need for it. I noticed you made a comment about not lowering the temperature. I was going to make an amendment to the degree day temperature from -15 to -10, but I remember last year we dropped it from -20 to -15. So let's see how this year goes. But with the second year of this, well, really third year of it, and within this spot that they are, but I really like the idea of cutting the people off at 12 o'clock. If you go back out, you stay out. Because when I was at the church, a number of nights I was there, people were coming and going all the time. And that's very disruptive, especially to the security guard, keeping track of everybody. And, but I think we're needed. Could we look at it, now that we have funding from the social services, could we look at possibly next year of accelerating this to -10 and using some of that funds to pay the oversee? But for this year, I'll support the -15. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Second round? All right, so we have the motion on the floor. Councillor Carr, can I suggest that we pass this motion, and then I'll recognize you for a follow-up motion regarding the year-end report? So we have the motion on the floor that the report, that we approve the operation of the overnight warming center and an operating budget of $30,000 funded through the Casino Social Infrastructure Reserve Fund. It's been moved and seconded. Following up on Councillor Sanderson's news, if we should receive funding from Hastings County, then obviously we won't be using this from the Social Infrastructure Fund. We'll have those funds, so it'll be back on that account. But the motion's on the floor. All in favor? It's carried. Councillor Carr, you would like to make a motion?
Yes, the request follow-up staff report in advance of the opening of the warming center regarding level of engagement from Hastings Prince Edward Public Health and Hastings County Community and Human Services with outreach intake services.
Can I clarify? So before this year's opening? So that's November the 15th. So we would be hoping to have the report on the 9th of November, I believe, is the...
I'll talk about why.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you. So Councillor Carr has made the motion. Is there a seconder? Councillor Millette has seconded. Councillor Carr, sorry to interrupt you.
Well, that's okay. And the reason why I'm asking in advance is listening to your comments and the fact that now we're into the third year. This is the real critical piece that's missing. Each time we found a location, and I'll be honest with you, this is better than the last two, but the real critical piece is the connection to services. And so what I would hate to see is that we put the request out to these organizations and we scuffle along through this winter, and then we find out later that we've now missed another opportunity where these folks can connect with these vital services. So what I'd like to see is in advance, so that if we have to perhaps have some conversations and really get down to business, we can't miss these people and just allow them to go off into the warming center and then wander around the city and not get the services they need and the help they need. And I just don't want to see another winter go by where we're not doing that.
Yeah, fair enough. I agree with you. I think Chief McDonald will endeavor to get that information back for us, but we have already passed that other standalone motion. So regardless, on November the 15th is the first night that the warming center will be available to be activated, and then we will get that report just as soon as it can be put together. So the motion's being moved and seconded. Any discussion on it? Councillor Kelly.
Through Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, that's good that we're going to move with Hastings County, and if you go to their website, they do have the information about homelessness focused programs, and in their reports they've got the 10-year plan. They have partnerships with 7 local service providers: Hastings Prince Edward Addictions and Mental Health, Pathways to Independence, Canadian Mental Health Association, Belleville and Quinte West Community Health, John Howard Society, Peer Support, and Youth Hub. So if they're already there with these partnerships, these are the folks that hopefully when this report comes out that they'll say, yes, we are willing to work with the most vulnerable in our community. And this can be a quick fix, hopefully, with Hastings County kind of spearheading the project. And final thoughts, I disagree with the mayor. I don't think -15 is the right temperature. Be outside in January all day at -10 and tell me if you think -15 is the passing mark. Thank you.
No, fair enough. Anyone else? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just on that, I took my train of thought here away now, unfortunately. It was to Councillor Carr's motion. I've gone, my train of thought is totally gone. Sorry.
It happens to the best of us, yes. Anyone else? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. And then if I can just remind everybody, There is no need for any resident in the city of Belleville to be outside during the winter. We have programs in place through a variety of agencies that are there to help people. There is no reason why someone does not have somewhere to be in during the evenings. We are doing the best we can to work with people that in some cases refuse the assistance, don't want the help. And it's a difficult line for us to walk. We have compassion and we care about those vulnerable people. But at the same time, I don't want anyone to think that we've neglected them, we've abandoned them, we've told them that we don't care about them. We have, and I think this program is one more indication for that. Thank you, my colleagues. We'll move on to 8B now, consent items, where council may adopt consent items by one motion. But prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. And so I'll go around the table. Councillor Culhane. No. Councillor Carr.
8B 8, 9, and 15, please.
And you said 15, sir?
That's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Sandison.
8B7 and 8B15.
Thank you. Councillor Millette.
Yes, 8B7, sorry, 8B7 as well.
Okay. Councillor Williams.
No, thank you.
Councillor McCaw. No, Councillor Thompson.
8B7 and 15.
Okay. Councillor Kelly.
No, thank you.
All right. So the motion is that the following agenda items be approved with the exception of items 8B7, 8B8, 8B9, and 8B15. The clerk is telling me that's correct. So the motion is on the floor. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Thompson and Councillor Williams. All in favor? It's carried. So let's move first to 8B7, which is the LPAT settlement decision for the condominium conversions at 217 Bridge Street East and at 230 to 232 Moira Street East. It is the Manager of Approvals Report number APS 2020-47, and the resolution is that the Manager of Approvals Report number APS 2020-47 regarding the LPAT settlement decision for condominium conversions at 217 Bridge Street East and 230 to 232 Moira Street East be received. Moved by Councillor Sandison and seconded by Councillor Millette. Councillor Sandison, you had asked this one be pulled? Sorry? No? We're in committee of the whole. You can stay seated. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, through your worship, I just wanted to bring this on the floor just to make sure that everybody understands how we got to this decision. This was about a year and a half long process where the city tried to persuade the applicant that condominium conversion wasn't in the best interest of the city or the current tenants of the building who operate under an apartment agreement. After a fairly long and protracted process, we did end up with what we think is a very reasonable outcome, in that there is a 12-year moratorium on any conversions of those apartment buildings into condominiums. And the reason that's important is that it essentially grandfathers or offers protection to the current residents for a reasonable period of time, such that hopefully that gives them all the protection they need. So I just wanted to bring that onto the floor and offer those comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this item? Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I just echoing Councillor Sandison's comments that I too wanted to just make sure that everybody understood that this is an equitable outcome to this situation, and it was important, I think, knowing full well that we may not have had a good chance, and we were warned that taking this to the LPAT may have been a losing proposition, but in the interest of looking out for the residents of these apartment buildings and others in the city where we have a dangerously high number of inaffordable apartments and a paucity of affordable apartments, we have to look after every single unit and make sure that they aren't eroded. There's been for too long condominiumized buildings in this city, and I see it all the time at the landlord and tenant board hearings, if and when they ever get started again. But basically tenants that are forced from, not so much forced onto the street, but forced to either into a condominium purchase when they're able to do so. But back to my point is that we will fight every one of these when we see it, however we can, in the best interest. And it was good to see that that Mr. Pynchon included in his report to us what council and the city have been doing up to date. Too often we take a lot of flack around this room for what is perceived as the city not doing much for affordable housing in this city, and this is one example where we have managed to get as best a win, I guess you could put it, in a situation where it looked grim. There was little hope of us winning, but we dug in our heels and decided that we were going to do the best we could for the residents of these buildings in at least winning some hard-fought concessions from the owners of those buildings. So I just wanted everyone to know that this city is taking this matter seriously, and on any more of these, I would hope that we are just as steadfast in looking out for the interests of tenants. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you very much. So these two apartment buildings now, with us accepting this tonight, are going to be converted to condominiums now.
In time, yes.
Yep. So in the comments and below, so we're updating the new draft official plan policy to require citywide rental vacancy rate threshold to be above 3% for at least 2 years before approving a conversion. So from here on in, is that wrote into the official plan now, or is that to be wrote in?
Director Ashton is in the audience, and I'm going to ask him to come forward because he has been managing through a whole slew of changes to a number of our planning and official documents. Director Ashton, maybe thank you for coming. Perhaps an update just on where we are with those amendments and what the inclusion of this will do and when we expect it to be effective.
So with regards to the new policies in the official plan, they would only come into effect once the official plan is approved by the province. In regards to this application, it's LPAT's written it in stone sort of thing, so it won't apply, it won't get backdated to this application.
So just on that question, Director Ashton, when do you think, or have we submitted the official plan adjustments to the province and we're waiting for them to reply? Do we have an estimated time of when we think it'll come back to the, I believe it goes to the planning committee back first and then comes to council?
Yeah, so it's the intent, so they have 90 days to review and provide comments. So our intent, before the public meeting is held, our intention is to have a public meeting at PAC in December. We're not sure. We hopefully, you know, the ministry will love our first draft and have no comments, but it may be a process after that, plus we'll have some public comments as well.
And then just lastly, so when do we think that we will, if they like the document, if they like the changes, when would we be able to give final approval to the changes so that we can implement it?
With good intentions, January or February, depending on the number of comments from the public as well as the province.
And I don't want anyone to think that if it's delayed a little bit longer, it's not our fault. There's a whole bunch of things. But if everything goes well, we could have it as early as January or February, yes. and then we would go forward. Councillor Thompson, does that give you the information you're looking for?
Yeah, and just further to that, if we hypothetically, now I guess this is hypothetical a little bit, if we'd had this in our plan at this stage, would we have stood better grounds to argue the conversion at this stage? I know it's stretching it a little bit, but would have it given us more meat to argue the conversion?
We could have felt more confident, but LPAT will make its decision.
Yes, I realize that. But it would,
Regardless of what our OP policies are, but I think,
but it would have been a little more comfortable for us to go with that. And this is what's the best in the future to try to combat some of these conversions.
yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Councillor Carr.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just similar comments to that. I don't have any questions for Mr. Ashton.
Thank you, Mr. Ashton.
Appreciate his work, certainly. The Planning Act is very technical in nature, and unfortunately then if our official plan and our zoning bylaws that we've created kind of hem us into a corner, and that's kind of what happened in this particular instance. And so by changing the vacancy rate, that certainly does help us. But aside from that, the Planning Act, because it's so technical in nature, and I know a few of the colleagues here sit at the Planning Advisory Committee, what's lacking in that legislation is the human impact. And when we look at a development, it checks off all the boxes from a planning perspective, but its impact on the community, its impact on existing development isn't really factored into to any degree. Staff certainly go the extra mile to work with the developers and different folks that bring applications to provide some of that flexibility. But there's a real breakdown, I think, at the legislative level in terms of not taking into consideration the human impact that's there. And this being a prime example of, we know what our community need is in terms of rental. We hear the demand, but if our rules don't line up with the technical rules of the Planning Act, we don't have a chance. And then frustrating on top of that is we have LPAT that can overturn our decisions and may not have the same connection to the community. So that's certainly something frustrating, and something I think I'll certainly have been mulling over in terms of how do we advocate to the province in terms of making some of those changes to the Planning Act so that it is not so technical in nature, and that councils across the province who should have their finger on the pulse of the community know best in terms of what we need for our community and actually have the say. So it's just a few frustrating points, I guess, as we see this come to an end on this application.
Thank you. Anyone else on this item? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? It's carried. 8B8, the amendment to traffic bylaw number 12967, Bell Boulevard and Sydney Street corridor improvements. The senior project manager's report number ENG 2020-20, and the resolution is that a bylaw to approve and authorize an amendment to bylaw number 12967, being a bylaw to regulate traffic within the corporate limits of the Corporation of the City of Belleville for the addition of traffic signal lights and turning lanes associated with the Bell Boulevard and Sydney Street corridor improvements project, as outlined in report number ENG 2020-20, be prepared for council's consideration. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Councillor Carr, you had raised this issue.
Yes, and thank you. Certainly that project's coming along and looking great, and it's certainly a good modernization of that portion of the city. I have a question. I want to ask it publicly because I know we're going to hear it. We're adding more traffic signals in the city. So the question I have is, with the lights at the casino, Hannah Court, and then down at Bell Boulevard and Sydney, will they be synchronized? And doing.
My understanding is that the answer is yes. And Director or CEO Bove, do you want to?
Well, I can certainly answer it generally, and if Director Ashton has any additional information, perhaps he can provide it. The city is working to synchronize signals anytime we install new ones. So when we do a reconstruction project like Bell Boulevard, we're able to install fiber and connect those signals together, which allows us to do that. So in this case, I would expect those 3 new signals will be synchronized, and any additional ones going westerly in the future on Bell Boulevard will be tied in. And in addition, I know Councillor Carr has brought up going southbound on Sydney Street, and certainly this project will allow the signals at Bell Boulevard and Tracy Street and Cascade Boulevard to be synchronized to a certain extent, and that should also assist with the traffic flow through that area, both east-west and north-south.
Okay, and I wanted that to be publicly known because we get a lot of complaints about that, and that also then impacts, in terms of driver behavior and speeding and all those other issues that we hear. So that's good news. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this item? Councillor Sandison.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to CAO Bove. So with the advance left that's going to be in place on Sydney at Bell, is there any particular reason that the advance left signal doesn't flash? And it's something that was asked of me the other day, and I didn't have a good answer. I was down in Kingston on Saturday, and I noticed that their advance, at least the ones I traveled on, their advance lefts actually flash. And the idea being that perhaps that triggers the driver to be more alert and get going rather than sit there. So that's sort of the comment, and the question is there any particular reason that ours don't?
Through the chair to Councillor Sandison, I do stand to be corrected, but I believe the flashing was a historic way of signaling advanced turns where you had the full circle green flashing, and that's essentially been superseded by the arrow. So you'll see newer lights have arrows that point to the left, and typically those don't flash. I suspect that the requirement to flash has been removed from the Highway Traffic Act with the advent of the use of arrows. And some municipalities, though, may feel the need to continue to have the flashing arrow as a continuation of past practice.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. 8B9, the Annual Director of Finance Treasurer's Report pursuant to Section 284 of the Municipal Act, RSO 2001. And it is the Director of Finance Treasurer's Report number DF 2020-21. And the resolution is that the Director of Finance Treasurer's Report number DF 2020-21, Annual Director of Finance Treasurer's Report pursuant to Section 284 of the Municipal Act, RSO 2001, be received. Councillor Carr and a seconder, Councillor Sandison. Councillor Carr, you had raised this item.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I just want to speak to my expense, and actually I wasn't aware until I saw the report that I had that expense there. It was in relation to a cancellation fee for the 2019 AMO conference. And since it was my cancellation because of my schedule, I just wanted to be publicly known that I've actually reimbursed the city this morning for that $96.05. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else on this item? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. Next, we have 8B15, which is the open air burning regulation, and it is the Deputy Fire Chief's report number FES 2020-08. And the resolution is that the Deputy Fire Chief's report number FES 2020-08, open air burning regulation, be received. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Councillor Carr, you would also raise this item.
Yes, thank you. And I certainly appreciate the fire chief, because I know that this has been a long process, and then the deputy chief with this report. They're asking for it to be received, but then later on in the conclusion that there's a recommendation that council support a change to the current regulatory structure, and that staff be required to produce an open air bylaw complete with technical criteria to permit open air burning throughout the municipality for council's consideration. So I'd like to actually just make an amendment to that to receive and add that portion so that we can actually get a bylaw back here for our consideration.
Right. Councillor Thompson, are you okay with that amendment or the modification to the resolution?
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to speak about.
So consider, you guys moved it, so consider the motion amended. Discussion on the amended motion. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. And I'm not going to take very long. I know that There's been some confusion amongst the public, and certainly it's not the fire service's fault. They've been very good in terms of public education, but I know that there is a demand for open-air burning to different degrees. I know I've talked to a few residents in the rural area in particular that's looking to do some larger burning and want to make sure that they're in compliance, as well as parameters that they're not going to interfere with their neighbors. I know that there are some questionable burnings going on, and the fire service is looking into those. And then also more in the urban areas, we have to make sure that if folks want to have open air burning, that they're using the right materials at the right setbacks, and certainly making sure that they're not interfering with the neighbors. The permit process, including a seasonal permit for recreational burning, I guess is how you could describe it, is certainly a good idea in the sense then the fire department would have a better understanding of what potentially could be going on in terms of the different burning. And I appreciate, look forward to this regulation coming in.
Thank you. Anyone else on this item? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Carr. Pretty well summed it up. I've had a lot of questions by a lot of different people, especially in the city, whether they're allowed these. And what I would like to, I think when it comes down to the bylaw and the description, that we be very specific about the types of equipment we're allowed to use in the city, because unless we're specific about it, we'll get all kinds of equipment out there that may be using firewood and they're not allowed. So if we can just, when it comes down to it, be very specific of what they're allowed to use in the city, because there's a lot of people would love to do it, have a burn situation in our backyard, even ourselves would like to, but it's so, right now we're not allowed it, so let's make sure we have the proper description. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Sandison.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So on the bylaw that's going to come forward, I think the last bylaw probably dates back to amalgamation, and so there's been a lot of changes, and it's welcome to see the new bylaw come forward. I think we need to, and I know that Councillor Carr has been in discussions with some of the residents and the police chief, or fire chief, sorry, as have I, and I think the biggest concern is the smoke that emanates from these things, and depending, even if you're burning the proper material, because it's not exiting through a chimney, and if it's a sort of a windy, overcast day, the smoke just drifts into the neighbors' yards. So I'm hoping that whatever the bylaw does, it tries to address that to the extent that it can. And then the other thing that I would ask the chief to consider is the fee structure. The fee structure at $20 to $25, if that's what it was 20 years ago, then maybe it should be something higher. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sandison. Anyone else on this item? I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. We'll move now to council information matters. Council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motions, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. I'll go the other way. Councillor Kelly.
No, thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
No, thank you.
Councillor McCaw.
No, thank you.
Councillor Williams.
No, thank you.
Councillor Millette.
No, thank you.
Councillor Sandison.
No, thank you.
Councillor Carr.
No, thank you.
And Councillor Culhane.
No, thank you.
All right, so the following agenda items be received. I need a motion moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor, it's carried. A motion to rise and report, moved by Councillor Culhane, seconded by Councillor Sandison. All in favor, it's carried. We have some bylaws, so I'll go through first reading, and if it's okay, I'll just read the numbers. First reading of bylaw number 2020-191, 192, 193, 194, 195, 196, 197, 198, 199, 200, 201, 202, and 203 for first reading only. Motion to moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Culhane. All in favor, it's carried. Second reading of bylaws 2020-191, 192, 193, 194, 195, 196, 197, 198, 199, 200, 201, and 202. Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any discussion? Councillor Carr.
Thank you. I'd like a recorded vote on 2020-191, please.
191. Okay. A recorded vote on 191. Anybody else have any items they'd like to discuss on this? So if it's okay, I will separate 191. So we will have second reading on bylaw 2020-191, and that is a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2019-02, being a bylaw to appoint members to boards, committees, and special committees, this being the School Bus Stop Arm Camera Implementation Committee. A recorded vote. Mr. McDonald, you can start whenever you're ready.
Councillor Williams?
Yes.
Councillor Carr?
Yes.
Councillor Culhane?
Yes.
Councillor Kelly?
Yes.
Councillor Millette?
Yes.
Councillor McCaw?
Yes.
Councillor Sanderson?
Yes.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes?
Mayor Panchuk?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. So the other items, 192 through to through to 202, all in favor? It's carried. And then third and final reading of bylaws number 2020-191, 192, 193, 194, 195, 196, 197, 198, 199, 200, 201, and 202. Moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? Carried. New business. I'll just start it off and then I'll open up. I know Councillor Thompson has an item to raise today. The City of Belleville is pleased to announce the appointment of Veronica Maclay Major as Director of Human Resources. Ms. Major has held the positions of Director of Human Resources for the City of Brampton and the Director of Human Resources for the City of London, and has practiced law for several years, working in both private practice and as an in-house counsel for financial service organizations. In addition to her law degree from the University of Windsor, she continues to pursue further education in employment, labor, human rights, conflict resolution, and leadership development. Veronica Major will begin her new position effective Monday, November the 16th, and we are proud to welcome her to our corporation. I want to just say a couple words about Halloween 2020. Obviously, COVID-19 has affected residents of the City of Belleville in many different ways in 2020. It is to be expected that as we approach the holidays, things will look a little differently. As we get closer to Halloween, it is the recommendation of the Hastings and Prince Edward Health Unit that we avoid traditional door-to-door trick-or-treating. The City of Belleville supports this recommendation, and we encourage residents to find different ways to celebrate this holiday. I know this is going to come as a disappointment to many children, but the safer we are this Halloween, the better chance we have at celebrating upcoming holidays in a more normal manner. The numbers that we are seeing yesterday, record numbers in the province of Ontario, as well as a record set the day before, are as a result of the Thanksgiving holiday, where some of the measures that public health have recommended were not followed. This year, Halloween is on a Saturday, so the recommendations and rules against gatherings does not mean that residents should instead have house parties. I want to remind everyone to continue to stay within your social bubbles, and remember, no more than 10 people who are not cohabitating. Remembrance Day this year. The traditional Remembrance Day ceremony will also look very different this year. Every year, huge crowds would attend on the Belleville Cenotaph on November the 11th as residents paid their respects to our veterans. We attend to say thank you to all those we have lost, for those that have given for us, and for those who continue to serve our country. Unfortunately, this year, due to ongoing COVID-19 restrictions, the November 11th ceremony at the Cenotaph will not be open to the public. It will be a smaller ceremony that will be by invite only for veterans. I know many members of the community will be disappointed that they will be unable to attend, and we hope that next year's ceremony will return to what we are all used to. Our community will be paying their respects in a different manner this year. However, any way this is done is respected and appreciated by our veterans. Just because you cannot go to the Cenotaph on November the 11th for the ceremony does not mean that you cannot attend before or after. Let's make sure we don't forget about the Poppy campaign this year and show them that we still remember them. Thank you to the Veterans Council for their leadership and work every year, but especially during these difficulties presented by COVID-19. Councillor Thompson, under new business.
Thank you, Your Worship. About 2 weeks ago, or two meetings ago, there was a motion we just received, instead of moving on, from the town of Amherstburg, requesting AOD website compliance extension. They also wanted an extension to the deadline, and we just received it. But I wanted to bring a motion forward they also wanted funding, but they wanted extension of the date. So my motion will strictly be on funding request. So moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Sean Kelly, who is also on the Accessibility Committee. Whereas Section 14, Circle 4 of the O-Reg 191/11 under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disability Act requires designated public sector organizations to conform to WCAG 2-level AA by January 1, 2021, and whereas the city remains committed to the provisions of the accessibility goods and services, and whereas the city provides accommodations to meet any stated accessibility needs where possible, and whereas declared pandemic COVID-19 has impacted the finances and other resources of the city, and whereas the Accessibility for Ontario with Disability Act contemplates the need to consider technical or economic considerations in the implementation of the accessibility standards. Be it therefore resolved that the Corporation of the City of Belleville, the request that the province consider providing funding support and training resources to the municipalities to meet these compliance standards, and that this be sent to our MP Todd Smith and MP Darrell Cramp, Right Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, and all municipalities of Ontario. And I put that on the floor.
Motion's moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Kelly. It's in order. Councillor Thompson, do you want to speak any more to it? Go ahead, please.
If I wouldn't mind, thank you. This was, in the number of years I've been with the City Council, this has come up a number of times, even at Good Roads, as I attended Good Roads, asking for funding for AOD regulations, which we think is great. We have an AOD Accessibility Committee. City of Belleville does wonderful work, but we've never really received funding from the government to implement any of these programs, whether it's funding to our buildings, except now we have an opportunity to receive $95,000 through renovations too here. But up till now, and the website is becoming so technical, just like one member of our Accessibility Committee, David, is blind. Now it has to be, he has to be able to receive all those documents through our website for the blind so he can understand them. So the technicality for the website is becoming more and more technical. So in turn, he needs more funding to implement. So I'm asking for our council to send this off to requesting the government to implement not only in Belleville, but all communities, some funding for website compliance.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Anyone else on a discussion on this item? Councillor Sandison.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Can I
Perhaps
just ask you to stand. We're in the regular. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps through you to Councillor Thompson, So am I to understand that we're asking for $95,000 and it's specifically earmarked for web utilization?
Sorry, that was a misunderstanding, Councillor Sanderson. I referred to the 95,000 that we're applying for the renovations of the council chambers. I use that as an example of trying to get some funding through them. I just use that number. So we're just asking for whatever money they can provide. We'll take 900,000 or we'll take 95,000.
Thank you, Councillor
Okay,
Sanderson.
just a follow on. So are we aware that there's a grant that's open for application, or is this just a general request?
This is general request.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else on this item? Yeah, so, and Councillor Sanderson, Councillor Thompson deserves an apology from myself and Director McDonald. 2 meetings ago, he did raise the item. We had convinced him that rather than simply amending the town of Amherst's resolution, that we should have our own. And at the last council meeting, with everything that was going on, we did not get it to him. So in conversation with him, it was best to come up under new business. And Director McDonald helped write the resolution, so it's all in order. So basically what we're doing is we're saying that we believe the province should not just make the rules, but they should help to fund the accessibility requirements for municipalities, and that we don't want to see the deadline extended past this year, that municipalities should become compliant with it. All right, that is, any closing comments, Councillor Thompson? It's your motion?
That's good, and I do appreciate the apology from the mayor and the clerk because we were delayed, but the mayor did call me on that Thursday, and actually I had forgot to call the clerk to even discuss it with him, so it was appreciated. But really, this is important because we have been asking for funds for all the actions on the accessibility, and this is just another one that's becoming more technical. So, thank you.
Okay, so the motion's on the floor. I will call the question. All in favor? And it's carries. Under new business, Councillor Culhane, you had an item you wanted to raise.
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to speak to the issue of clear masks. I'd like people to note that I have a clear mask and I wear it exclusively. It is Canadian made. It is available via the internet for bulk purchase only. Currently available for purchase at a business called Deja Vu Boutique at 6835 Highway 62, just north of the city at the Somerville Plaza. If any other business is carrying these masks, I'd like to be notified so that I can let people know where to go to get them. The isolation generated by the pandemic is among perhaps second to physical illness only, its greatest impact to the individual. It's particularly debilitating for people who rely on facial expression, along with tone of voice, to enhance their hearing if they have any subtle hearing issues. We can combat that isolation. We can each do something to help every individual in our community. We can show them our faces, and we can encourage them to show ours. I encourage other businesses to seek out clear face masks and offer them for sale, and I encourage everyone to buy one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Culhane. Anyone else with comments? As I look across and see Councillor Millette wearing his clear face mask as well. So, anyone else for new business? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So a couple items. The first item is that prior to the COVID pandemic and since understandably delayed, a proposal was requested to establish curbside giveaway days for council's approval, whereby residents could recycle reusable household items by putting them on the curb for someone to take for free. So not only would this result in neighbors helping neighbors, but it would also divert these items away from landfill and foster a green community. And what brought it to mind is just this past Saturday, the city of Kingston held such an event, and they did it in a COVID-safe manner. So residents were advised to take the necessary precautions by wearing a mask if they couldn't maintain a 2-meter physical distance while picking up the items, wash and disinfect the items as soon as they picked them up, and then, of course, wash and disinfect their hands after handling the items. So to that end, I'd like to ask for a staff report to come to council early in the new year so that we can launch this program in 2021. So I have talked to staff. They're aware that the request is coming forward and there shouldn't be an issue.
Right, thank you.
Second item is the Quinte Humane Society and what we can do to help. So the Quinte Humane Society and their fundraising for a new building at a new location has been enthusiastically supported by this council. And I would like us to consider other ways to generate funds for this goal. A goal that, when realized, will not only serve our community, but it will also serve the region. So some of the examples that I've come up with are perhaps dog park naming rights, advertising on the fences at the dog parks, perhaps, and this will get me in trouble, a levy on dog licenses earmarked specifically for the Humane Society. And then the other thing that will probably get me in trouble is the establishment of cat licenses. And I am a cat owner, and I would have no problem
Councillor Sanderson, you are going to unleash the fury upon us.
I said for consideration.
Yes.
Very important. So if we were to adopt cat licensing, and this would be new, and I'd like to see all of that revenue for the first 2 years donated to the Quinte Humane Society's build project. And so this would be council's commitment, and it wouldn't hamstring future councils, i.e. it would just be for the period that this council is in place. And so to that end, I'd like to ask for a staff report to come forward early in the new year to examine these opportunities and bring forward a recommendation to council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson. And all joking aside, I had occasion on Friday last week to stop on Avonlow Road and to bring my greetings and my congratulations to the new Executive Director of the Quinte Humane Society, Marilyn Lowry. And in the course of the discussion, we talked about our support for a new facility and our offer previously that you know, the committee or she come to a meeting of council where we can discuss the plans for their project and any input that we could provide. So she was, I think, very happy to hear that. Offer was still stood, and she will work along those lines. And I think that the staff report that we'll work on will come together very well at the right time, and we shall see what that brings from it. I know that Councillor McCaw and Councillor Culhane want to say something on this related item. So Councillor McCaw, go ahead if you'd like to.
Thank you. Just through you. Just for the record, I am a board member for the Quinte Humane Society, so I'm not going to be participating on any discussion or voting with regard to Councillor Sanderson's ideas, but I just, from a personal standpoint, I thank him very much for that. Anything that can be done for the Humane Society is a great thing.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Right. And get ready for the emails regarding the cat licenses. We're going to be in for it. New business. Anyone else for new business? Okay, Councillor Culhane, you wanted to stay back on Councillor Sanderson's point. Go ahead.
Through you, thank you. I just wanted to make the identical point that Councillor McCaw made. I'm also a director on the board of the Quinte Humane Society, and I'm delighted with your motion. I'll handle
Or suggestion,
cat
yes.
emails.
Yeah, just
Or
a
your
request.
suggestion.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else under new business? Seeing none, there are no motions today. Anyone have any notices of motion? Notice of motion? Seeing none. Announcements. Anyone have announcements? Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship. Very briefly, Saturday was Quinte Trash Bash, And while it wasn't, we didn't fill dumpsters like we did in the past, that's a little bit to be understood because, as we all know, Quinte Trash Bash is a sort of a spring cleaning event, and there's always all kinds of trashy treasures to find after the snow melts. This year, though, we urged as many community volunteers as possible to come out, and I just wanted to say thank you to some city staff members and some committee members of the Green Task Force for taking part. But again, thanks very much to all who took part.
Yeah, and thank you to you and the members of your committee. Councillor Millette, you're the chair of the Green Task Force. This has been a year of such unparalleled challenges, and sometimes we don't even have the ability to bring people together on these wonderful community building activities. So kudos to you and the committee for continuing it, and we hope that we will return to more normal times again soon so we can get those dumpsters of trash picked up and our city looking even better. Anyone else for announcements? Okay, I have a couple I just want to do. Sorry? Councillor Sanderson, sorry, I didn't. Go ahead, sir.
Your Worship, I was a little slow getting my hand up there. So just a couple. As Mayor of the Month, I was pleased to represent His Worship at the kickoff event for Small Business Week. It's an annual celebration of entrepreneurship that the Business Development Bank of Canada has organized for some 40 years. And this year's theme, I thought, spoke volumes to the challenges and the creativity of small business in 2020, and their theme is Forging the Way Forward. Second item is that the launch of Orange Campaign locally, Grand Quinte is hosting a webinar event sponsored by the Eastern Central Ontario Regional Council of the United Church of Ontario. And so titled Standing Together Against Gender-Based Violence, the webinar event will be held November the 4th, starting at 11 a.m. And finally, from November the 5th to November the 11th is Veterans Week, where we will honor those who have served Canada, past and present, in times of war, military conflict, and peace. What's particularly significant this year is it marks the 75th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. And while we owe them a great debt of gratitude, which we cannot repay, we do honor them each and every year, and their sacrifice will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Just one, I should have had my hand up. It was an honor to represent the city at the opening of the artworks on North Front Street on Saturday. The mayor wasn't able to attend. Agreed, and I want to congratulate Chris Bennett and wish him all the best.
Right. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. It's my pleasure to declare that November 5th to 11th is Veterans Week in the city of Belleville, for all the reasons that Councillor Sanderson spoke about. I'm also very pleased to announce that the city of Belleville will be running the Overnight Warming Center again this year. This year we have a change of location, and we'll be holding the Overnight Warming Center at the former Belleville Police Station in the gymnasium. As of November the 15th, the Overnight Warming Center will be ready to be activated when the Director of Emergency Services, the Fire Chief, determines that the temperature threshold permits. The Overnight Warming Center will run until April the 15th, 2021. I would like to extend a large congratulation to the Belleville Police Service for their successful move to the new police facility. This move was extremely complicated and involved many different departments, but it was handled very smoothly, and the Belleville Police Service are now fully operational in the new Sydney Street location. A big thank you goes out to Acting Chief Callahan for his guidance and support during this move. And when it is safe to do so, we will have a very grand opening of the new facility with lots of festivities and an opportunity for the public to also see that facility. Yard waste pickup and drop-off. A reminder to residents that the scheduled leaf and yard waste pickup is continuing across the city. All of the information can be found on our website at belleville.ca or by calling City Hall at 613-967-3200. There is information for the schedule for curbside pickup in different areas of the city, as well as the hours of operation for the drop-off facility on Wallbridge Crescent and those hours of operation. The Quinte Sports and Wellness Center pool opening update. The pool opening has been great so far, and staff and participants have been happy to get back into the pool. Our lane swims are filling up and averaging a minimum of 12 swimmers per swim out of the 16 open slots. The Belleville Beast swim team is renting the pool now 22 hours a week with between 18 to 32 swimmers per session. Aqua fitness classes began on October the 13th, and every class hit their minimum registration numbers, and we have been able to run those, which means that we're offering 20 aqua fitness classes weekly, with attendance being more than 100 participants per week. This was a great outcome and is similar to our session numbers in previous years. On Sunday, yesterday, our swim lessons began, and we were open to all ages. Our class numbers are much less than usual, but are slowly filling up as we reach out to the families that participated previously. Daily, the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center pool, I believe it's called the Templeman Pool Aquatic Center, is averaging between 90 and 120 swimmers. And this number is increasing weekly, and we are open with swims or rentals about 89 hours per week. Second rink update. So far, the opening of the second rink at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center has been going very well. To date, our prime ice, that being weeknights and weekends, is 95% booked and used. Minor sports organizations are renting about 80% of the ice time, and adult groups are renting about 15% of the remaining ice time. We have received various comments from our user groups about how happy they are to be back on the ice finally. They have said being on the ice is giving them a sense of normalcy back into their lives during these crazy times. To date, all of our user groups have been very supportive and understanding of our new regulations due to COVID-19. We have received various compliments from our user groups about how impressed they were with our new rules and guidelines, and many commented that they have felt very safe coming into our facility. I want to thank our staff for accommodating. We started off with a certain set of rules, and we've been able to relax them. We are now permitting some family members to observe their kids during hockey practice and during skating. And as long as everyone continues to cooperate and we have a safe environment, we'll continue to do so. Due to the demand for ice and the cooperation of all of our user groups, I'm excited to say that we'll be opening our third arena on November the 2nd. We look forward to seeing even more ice users getting back onto the ice. But I do want to take this moment to announce that we will not be renting our facilities to organizations or individuals that are in areas of Ontario that are in a modified stage 2 or other restrictions which are different from our region. This is done for the health and wellness of our users and our staff. We're starting to see some events begin again. We saw that during the summer slowly, and they continued. The Rotary Veterans Park has officially opened. We now have a fully accessible park in the city of Belleville. This playground is a great addition to the splash pad and the field of ability. Thank you to our kids for helping to make this park a reality, and thank you to so many members of council who joined me for that event. This past Thursday, October 22nd, was an exciting day within the city of Belleville. I was so proud to announce that the city and the Belleville Agricultural Society struck a deal, and after years and years of negotiation, the Belleville Fairgrounds property is moving. The new location is in the Thurlow Ward, just off of Highway 37 and Black Diamond Road. Thank you, everyone, for the kind words about our accomplishment, as well as the kind words on my comments. I tried to justify the importance of that event for our city. On Friday, I had the great pleasure to attend the grand opening of the station in the Bayview Mall, and that is a youth activity center for children to be able to go there and do physical activities as well as their homework. Congratulations to the station and everyone involved on their grand opening. And lastly, my colleagues, I just want to wish us all a happy anniversary. October 22nd, 2018 was the date of the last municipal election. And it has been a wonderful experience that I get to share with you all so far. We have so much that we've already accomplished since that time, and there is still much more that we are going to do. Congratulations to all of you. Next item is the confirmatory bylaw. I need a motion that the bylaw number 2020-204, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on October 26th, 2020, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 26th day of October 2020. Moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Millette. All in favor, it's carried. Motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Carr.